many square feet are you giving?
Those pens are 20 by 60s, or about on 15 ewes. They've got 20 by 30 under barn. So, and you're still gonna, you know, you're not gonna get them all the time, because that you thought was gonna lamb this day, she's gonna lamb 3 days early. But the idea there is that you don't have 5 or 6 lambing the same night. If you have 2 or 3, then they're probably gonna get off far enough from one another.
I think what you discovered on the pasture is that a pasture environment, even probably with some bad weather, is better than stuffing those ewes in at 10 square feet per head in barn. Especially if they got twins.
Well, if you've got a windbreak, you know, because we lambed on pasture, and we lambed in January, February, and March. And it can be a cold son of a gun down there too. But as long as you've got a windbreak and they can get somewhere that they can stay dry, they'll bring in lamb.
I will say this, those of you that have been in Clay Center, that's about as bad of a pasture lambing environment as you could have.
Yeah,
There are no windbreaks, it's flat, there's no drainage for the water, there's no hills or anything for sheep to get out of it. I don't think, we have done absolutely nothing here that I know every one of you here couldn't do better than what we did.
What about predator problems?
Yes. And you could do that better than what we do too. We've got too many regulations on us that we have to follow. Yeah, we use donkeys, we use guardian dogs. Yeah, we've got issues there.
Kreg, you may cover it yet, but and it's kind of back to the seed stock thing, but you've done no more to this selection process than keep back for breeding ewes that raise triplet ram lambs.
We haven't even got to that. In this experiment that I've talked about, that's just a random sample of rams we bought from the industry, and we kept 95% of the ewe lambs for breeding. So there's been no selection applied to that at all yet, which is what I'm going to get to you. Okay, so here's what we want. You know, for the industry, we've got to, if we're going to have an industry here, we've got to have more lambs in this country. And the only way we have more lambs is if it's more profitable for people to raise them. And you can't do it with more labor. Okay? You can't work harder. Okay? You can't work harder. Okay?
You can't even hire it, doesn't he?
No. So you've got to have sheep that will do it on their own. So just get out of the way. That's another advantage a lamb can make, because you guys are out planting corn and doing other stuff. Okay? Don't do those other things unless the sheep do their stuff.
For here, it'd probably be April.
Yeah, I know.
We're a little earlier here than you are.
But we do the same thing. I mean, you lamb outside earlier than what we do here up in Nebraska. Okay. So what we're in the process of doing now is I want to create an easy care maternal line of prolific hair sheep that can raise triplets on pasture. Okay? I want to take the wool off them, because that's part of the easy care. I want to concentrate on meat production. I don't want to mess with the wool. I want them to raise triplets on pasture. We know they can raise twins. We showed that already. Asking a ewe, this kind of a ewe to rear twins on pasture isn't a challenge. So if we're going to make something good, let's find ewes that can rear triplets on pasture. Yep.
Do you remember what kind of rate you had on those 1, 2, and 3-year-old ewes left on the pasture?
What the drop rate was?
Yeah, because you said they raised almost 2. Pretty easy. I mean, was there lots of multiple births?
Oh yeah.
I mean,
on a 3-year-old ewe, those average drop rates are probably close to 2.4.
So there's lots of triplets and quads.
Well, you're getting about 40%, roughly about 40% triplet litters. But I'll go a little further and address this. Okay, so that's what we want to do. We want to make a new breed of sheep that doesn't have wool on it that can rear triplets.
Now, is selecting the wool off in your criteria, does that selecting the wool off fall pretty low, or is it pretty high? I mean, just an inverse of what selecting for wool did.
That's a good question. I don't know.
See what I'm saying?
Let me get a couple of slides down the road, and maybe this will answer that question for you. So here's what we're doing with breed composition on this. I'm going to make it half Romanoff, because reproduction is a key. Now, you can't rear triplets unless she gives birth to triplets. Okay? So we've got to get reproductive rate high. The white Dorper cross was the one that did best before, so we're going to put some white Dorper into it. And I didn't want just 2 breeds in this new composite, because we want to maintain more hybrid vigor in there. And the Katad, by bringing it in, we bring in the ability, we bring in more hair, we get rid of wool, we have some parasite resistance, again falling in line with easy keeping. That's what that breed composition is. This is how we have done this. We have a flock of Romanoff sheep at the research center. We bought Katahdin rams, white Dorper rams, and mated them to Romanoff ewes. And then we mated the offspring that were half Katahdin and half Romanoff to these offspring that are half white Dorper and half Romanoff, both rams and ewes on each side. And what comes out of the bottom of that is our target composition of half Romanoff, quarter white Dorper, quarter Katahdin. You probably can't see that red. The last fall, this is what we put into breeding. We had about 120 of these 2-breed cross ewes, about 240 of these, and over 700 of that final breed composition. We want to do this on a large enough scale that if this comes out successful to us, we can provide it as a new line to the sheep industry and be able to sell large numbers so that they can have it. And we have an objective way of determining that. So this is where we're at right now. These ewes will land this spring and be gone, and this number down here will get up to about 1,200 ewes. Next one. Okay, question, what are we doing with selection? We mate roughly 1 ram to 25 ewes. These ewes are fairly productive and dropping over twins on average, so we get a lot of sons from each sire, and I only need to replace a sire with 1 son. So the question is, if I have a bunch of sons out there, how do we decide which ones we're going to keep back for breeding? Okay? Here's some of the things we're doing, that I'm doing with this. I'm managing the genetic diversity. What I mean by that is I'm replacing a sire by his son, so we don't get inbreeding in this population. We're maintaining at least 35 distinct sire lines out there. Have to maintain that, or we lose the advantage of heterosis within a composite population. Anything that isn't structurally sound, I get rid of. Same way with health. I'm trying to make this population white. The black and Romanoff is recessive, since the half Romanoff in here, we keep getting black lamb born in there. And I think ultimately it might be more acceptable to the industry if they look more uniform, and it might help with the value of the pelts. I want to take the horns off them, make sure that they're bold. I want to shed hair and wool. I want those ram lambs to rear as triplets on pasture. I want them to be genetically resistant to scrapie. I'm not doing enough on making them tolerant of parasites. And I also want to make them genetically less susceptible to OPP. I haven't said anything about that, but we've discovered a marker there that we're going to make available very shortly that affects whether or not sheep are susceptible or resistant to OPP.
What is shortly? Oracle says 3 years.
Oh, now you badmouthed him before, so I don't believe what he says.
Well, I do though.
Yeah,
Sam's
a good guy. We're working with GeneSeek now, and they are. We published a manuscript on this. We've given them all the information they need to develop the tests. We've seen the results back from the first test, and they agree 100% with ours. So I think that they have the protocol in place. They're very responsible, and I think that
End of the year maybe?
maybe 3 months, maybe. This thing's close. Okay. Okay, so how do we do this? Here's an example. Here's a ram that we used, and he had 17 sons that were alive at 20 weeks of age. And of those 17 sons, you can't read this, that's okay. Here's their IDs down here. We have information on the age of the dam, the type of birth, the type of rearing, information on whether or not they're resistant to scrapie, information on their genetic resistance to OPP, whether they're polled, have horns or scurs, whether they're white, spotted, or predominantly colored. And then we give them a wool score, a wool shedding score.